How's it going? And welcome to No Fun Alloved's review and overview of Waterdeep Dragon Heist, a 5th edition module. In this review, we'll be going over the book and all that entails in it. And over the course of many videos on the GM series, we're going to be diving into all of the locations, how we can go ahead and spice this place up, and make it truly come to life. Of course, there's going to be a ton of spoilers, so players do not watch this, but DMs that want added insight on this amazing module, go ahead and stick around because we have a lot to cover. And here we are, the splendor of the North, Waterdeep. This place is freaking ginormous. This is basically the New York, the metropolitan area of all of the Sword Coast. This place is just absolutely brimming with so much. There's so many buildings, so many locales, so many different things, and it's all structured incredibly well. You can see here that the city planners definitely had a idea in mind on how they wanted certain streets to be straight and there to be, little roads in between and all that fun stuff. You can definitely see that this place has a lot of feel of its own. And once you start diving into individual locations here, you're going to be seeing that. You're going to be seeing how this place has evolved over the hundreds and hundreds of years that it's been around. So what is Waterdeep Dragon Heist? Well, the Waterdeep part is correct. We basically get this big old book about the city of Waterdeep. And mind you, a humongous portion of this book is dedicated to fleshing out this city. We get immense detail on certain locations, and we just get a general idea and feel of how you can roleplay out and run a game using this city. But the second part of the whole title here is Dragon Heist. What is the Dragon Heist? Well, you see, in the city of Waterdeep, gold coins look like this. They look like intricate little details here, and of course you can spot on the back that there is a dragon. So the colloquial term for coins in Waterdeep is different little terms here and there, but more importantly, the gold piece is called a dragon. So we get that the title indicates that it is going to be some sort of heist involving a whole bunch of gold. Well, not exactly. You're not building an Ocean's 11 team. You're not going on some super montage of pulling off this elaborate heist against some casino or some bank or something. No, the details of this plot are a little bit intriguing. You see, the previous open lord of Waterdeep, one Lord Neverember, basically embezzled 500,000 gold and hid it around somewhere in the city. No one knows where. In fact, Neverember doesn't even know. Because when he had it stored, he had a wizard go ahead and remove his memory. And then, coincidentally, that wizard somehow disappeared a little bit later on. Wonder what happened with that. So somewhere hidden around the city is 500,000 gold, and of course, everybody wants it. There's going to be whispers on the wind, and every single faction and every major entity is going to want their hands on that big pile of gold. So of course, now that we know that there's 500,000 gold floating around somewhere, the real question is, how do we actually figure out where it is? Well, there is a single item located somewhere in the city that can direct you to it, called the Stone of Galore. The Stone of Galore is a transformed aboleth, which has the knowledge of how to get to this Vault of Dragons, as it is referred to. So then the question becomes, how do your players get involved in this whole sort of affair? Well, thankfully, we are given actually a pretty intricate little design here on the adventure background and the adventure flowchart, which can certainly paint the picture a lot easier for us. So we can see that the Stone of Galore was stolen from the palace and ended up in the possession of a one Xanathar, which we'll be getting to in a moment. Then the stone was stolen again, and eventually basically starts making its way closer and closer to the party, and your party will eventually come across this thing and will actually have the privilege of being able to find all of this gold. Of course, this is not going to be made easy because there is a lot of people looking for it, and a lot of people, of course, are going to be bumping elbows with your players, and that might be for the good or bad of them. Something important to note about this campaign is that it is a relatively short campaign, and also it is more of a air quote railroaded game, as a lot of story beats seem to fall into your players' hands, and sometimes they don't get too many options. But that's perfectly fine. This is a great module for newer DMs to go ahead and find out how to structure a story, and also a great game for experienced DMs that want to go ahead and shake this thing up a bit. So over the course of 5 different chapters, your party is only going to level up to level 5. This is a very, very small scale campaign, which is what I love. You know, not every single campaign needs to be levels 1 through 13 or level 1 through 15 or whatever. This is a short yet sweet campaign. So to really kick this whole campaign off, we start off with Chapter 1, A Friend in Need. Your players are going to find themselves at the Yawning Portal, the birthplace of many a great adventure over the many, many years that D&D has been around. Your players are going to be finding themselves meeting up with a one Volo Thamkadarm, aka Volo. Volo is going to say, hey, my friend's missing, and I want you to go ahead and help. And if you help, I've actually got a very big prize for you. Your players, being people that showed up to the table to play an adventure, are going to sign up on this, and this is going to eventually lead them down the trail to finding far greater riches. As they go ahead and search around, they discover that Volo's friend, Floon, was actually kidnapped. But in addition to that, he was also kidnapped alongside another person that looks similar to him, a one Renaer Neverember. Sound familiar? That is because Renaer is actually the son of the guy who embezzled all this money. Your friends meet with Renaer, they go and save Floon, and when they return, they not only get a great piece of information about the city in regards of Renaer saying, hey, my dad stole some money and people are after me all the time, and hey, I'll go ahead and tell you what's up later on. But also Volo gives them a deed to a magnificent piece of property in this land. Of course, when your players show up and find the place, they discover that it is completely ran down and hasn't seen use in ages. But hey, property is property. This would normally cost a tremendous amount of gold if they were to buy it brand spanking new. So the fact that they're giving it to it with next to no effort is pretty outstanding. And this is the tie-in to the campaign. Getting an awesome piece of property that your players can go ahead and build up and make their own is going to really tie them to the city, which is what you want. You want your players to be sucked into the life of the city and making a whole bunch of friends and enemies and keeping within the confines of this map. Because the adventure is all about the city, that you don't want your players going around the world and doing crazy things. They're also low level anyway, so they probably shouldn't be going out and doing too much crazy stuff. So now armed with the deed of the Trollskull Manor, which resides in Trollskull Alley, your players set up in Chapter 2, where they go around fixing up their place, making a whole bunch of friends, and eventually joining some of the factions that reside here within the city of Waterdeep. Your players can join major factions that reside within the Sword Coast, such as the Lord's Alliance, the Emerald Enclave, the Zentarum, and many more. And what's really awesome about this chapter is we get awesome detail on, of course, the residence that your players reside in, but also we get a bunch of information about the factions that your players are going to be joining. All the named NPCs that come alongside with those, and some really fun quests that your players can be doing to earn some gold and earn some renown with that faction that they have joined. So Chapter 2 is all fun and games. Your players are getting set up in the city of Waterdeep. They're making a name for themselves. They're getting richer. But of course, all good things must come to an end, or at least a new chapter is open. Specifically with Chapter 3, Fireball, their world is going to be rocked literally, as one day, right outside their own business, a fireball is going to explode out, killing a bunch of people. One of those people was in fact holding the Stone of Galore and was trying to get it to the party. That is when your players are going to be on the trail for the Stone of Galore. That's when all the information is going to start spilling out, that your players need to go out and find the Stone of Galore and, of course, interact with the many different factions that are vying for this. And this is where the game is going to start slowly ticking down and changing up drastically. One of the most unique aspects of this whole module is the fact that there is a tremendous amount of replayability. Not only for the DM DMing this thing, but also in the fact that you can even have players rerunning this thing. Because in Chapter 4, we get diverging paths. In Chapter 4, we get 4 separate ways on how this story can pan out. And each of those 4 paths coincides with a season and a villain. There are 4 major villains of this campaign, but only one of which will be in your campaign for the most part. But it does state right there in the text that you can go ahead and start throwing them all in together. And that's something I'm going to certainly be covering in the guide series about all these amazing factions that your players are going to be butting heads with. It is amazing fun. So in Chapter 4, your players are facing off with whatever faction they're going up against, and the entire story is going to change depending on the season that they're playing this. And they're constantly chasing after the Stone of Galore, constantly chasing after it, and then they finally get it. And what is their reward? They discover the location of the Vault of Dragons. Where is the Vault of Dragons? Well, once again, that is tied to whatever season you play this in, which is a ton of fun. Like I said before, even though most modules you don't want to be replaying for players, you could theoretically do it with this, because there is some aspects that they could try and metagame, but at the end of the day, there is so many different outcomes that they wouldn't be able to predict where it is. So Chapter 4 ends with this awesome conclusion of your players finding the Vault of Dragons, diving their way inside, and hopefully retrieving the hard-earned gold. But of course, things aren't always that simple. The villain could always step in and make your players' lives a living hell. So who are these villains that your players could be going up against? This is the main draw of this campaign. This is really going to change up a lot of the encounters your players are going into. This is going to change their feelings in regards of how they interact with these villains. And of course, most important of all, this is going to affect how you are going to assault the party. This is a low-level campaign, so you can't be throwing too much at them. But the villains that they're going up against are larger than life. So let's start diving into each one of those, shall we? In Chapter 5, Spring Madness, we go into full detail on the Xanathar, a beholder mastermind that has a criminal syndicate that rests underneath the city of Waterdeep. The Xanathar is powerful, he's a beholder, and not only that, but he also has magical rings, making him incredibly deadly. But of course, like all beholders, he is insane, and that insanity is going to have its own set of detriments. But of course, this is going to be a ton of fun for your players to go up against. How do they negotiate going up against a large criminal syndicate and also a beholder that has been around for a long time? But as they may discover, that beholder actually is just another one of the many beholders that has taken up the mantle of the title of the Xanathar. In Chapter 6, Hell of a Summer, we get the Castellanters. The Castellanters are not monsters, they're not fiends, they're just humans. But the thing is that they are incredibly powerful. They are one of the most influential and affluent people in this entire city. So they don't need a criminal organization behind their back. They have gold and they have influence. So your players are going to have to seriously navigate going around a political party like this. Whereas the previous villain, the Xanathar, simply wants the gold to become more powerful, the Castellanters are chasing after something. They need money because they sold out their own children to the devil, Asmodeus. So not only are they chasing after all this gold to sacrifice, but near the end you'll see that they're willing to give up more than just gold for their kids. In Chapter 7, Maestro's Fall, we see that Drow have in fact invaded the city of Waterdeep. But these Drow are not like Drow such as the slaver types underneath the Underdark. No, these Drow are led by one Jarlaxle Bainlore, a roguish individual who is out to go ahead and make a name for not only himself, but for the people of Luskan. Jarlaxle and his merry band of Drow are attempting to find this gold and use it as leverage to go ahead and get the city of Luskan to join the Lord's Alliance. He, of all the villains, is far less evil than the rest of them, but he is still willing to do quite a lot to get that gold, so hopefully your players don't get on his bad side too much. And in Chapter 8, we have Winter Wizardry. Your players will be going up against Manshoon, a clone of the man that in fact started the Zhentarim oh so long ago. Manshoon is an incredibly powerful caster, and he is going to be using his fraction of the Zhentarim agents around the city of Waterdeep to exert his control. In addition to that, your players will constantly be going up against his own simulacrums. Yes, your players will be going up against clones of a clone. Who would have thought? Manshoon is trying to get this gold to go ahead and reassert his control over the Zhentarim all around and build up the organization that his former self did oh so long ago. This module is a ton of fun. It's explosive, it's dynamic. It is linear, yes, but sometimes having a linear adventure makes the adventure actually not bogged down in the unnecessary. And that's really going to come down to your DMing style. But if you run this more as written, then you're going to see that your players are heading down a awesome roller coaster of adventure, which is fantastic. The strength of Waterdeep is the location itself. Waterdeep is just jam-packed full of amazing content. Even though it is not like all these other adventures where going around globetrotting, saving the world, this and that, it doesn't need to be that. Waterdeep has so much fine detail jam-packed in it, you don't need to go anywhere else. And the other major strength of Waterdeep is the NPCs. Your players are not going to feel alone in this world. They are going to have a ton of NPCs that they get to interact with, and because it all takes place in a city, they will regularly interact with them. Something that's an issue in all of the campaigns is if you have an NPC, but you're going around the world, you're never going to meet them. In this, because your players are in the city the whole time, they will constantly meet up with their friends and foes, and that's a ton of fun. I say if you want to take some notes on how to make an urban adventure, you should take a hard look at this, because you're not going to find much better in 5th edition. This city is just so well done, and the encounters that your players are going to be getting into, the NPCs that they're going to meet, and the locations that they'll discover are well worth the effort you're going to be putting into this thing. So in conclusion, I'm going to go ahead and say that this adventure is fantastic. It just is. It works extremely well. It is great for new DMs. It is great for veteran DMs. You can do so much with the modularity of it, and most important of all, it holds your hand. Something that I find a lot of other modules don't do. For example, let's go ahead and take a look at this. The Chains of by the Season. This is where your players are going to be encountering, and you can go ahead and literally just have it labeled down. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and have this set in the summer, and they're going to go ahead and the first encounter is going to be at the Mausoleum, so you go ahead and read all of that. Okay, the second encounter is going to be in the Converted Windmill, and then you go ahead and start reading that. It makes life so simple. And of course, the book also says that if you don't want it to be simple, don't let it be simple. And I agree. If you want to have the game set in the summer, but if you want your players to be going up against Manchun, then go ahead and do a little swip and swap. If you want all of the villains to be jam-packed in this adventure, then do it. I encourage it. There's a lot of modularity to this campaign, so do it. There isn't a wrong answer here, just go ahead and have fun with it. You're not going to get another module like this because it is small in scale, but it makes your players feel like they're in a world of their own. And that's what we want. We want your players to feel like they are the star of the show, even though they're surrounded by titans. And that is fantastic. The setting is great, the NPCs are great, the story is a ton of fun, and your players are going to appreciate the awesome roller coaster that they get set on. That is going to do it for me for this review and overview. I'm going to be doing a hard dive into all of this module because this module is fantastic. I played in it, I ran it, and I can't wait to see what you guys tell me about it. That is going to do it for me. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you to all my amazing patrons up here. You guys are absolutely awesome. Thank you so very much. That is going to do it for me. Thank you so much for listening, and I cannot wait to see you all in the next one.